Good evening, I'm Savannah Kelly. Welcome to APTN National News. The family of Daryl Sabarin is looking for answers after the father of four died at the University of Alberta Hospital last week after what they were told was due to a confrontation with peace officers. APTN's Chris Stewart spoke to the family.
The family of Daryl Sabarin says he was trying to get his life turned around, looking for work, trying to stop his addiction to alcohol. On March 4th, he admitted himself to the University of Alberta's hospital for detox treatment. 2 days later, he was dead. His family says they were told that the 45-year-old Dene man died after an altercation with peace officers after becoming agitated on the early morning of March 6. Shauna Gordon was Daryl's sister-in-law. She says she was told that Daryl became unresponsive after being restrained and could not be revived. She told APTN that his face had visible bruising and blood coming out of his nose. She and Daryl were co-raising his 4 boys.
And now I have grieving kids in my house who are crying all night. They're in therapy already. So a lot of healing and a lot of things are going to happen in my home. And it's lifelong. They're not going to have a father.
The family has gathered to remember Daryl and look at memories. Raiden is his oldest son.
In times where I felt so alone, in times where I felt like I had nobody, I always had my dad to call, you know? Because I knew that he would always be there, and he would always be there to talk, lend an ear. And he always had good advice.
Jeremiah is 16 and says he is staying strong for his family.
I guess you can say I'm angry. I guess you can say I'm sad. I guess you could say I'm strong, confident in what happened. Because at the end of the day, no matter how many tears I cry, no matter how many furious moments that I have in my life that's filled with rage, at the end of the day, I'm still going to get these things I need to get done, right? In honor of my dad.
The Edmonton Police Service are investigating the incident. Alberta Health Services told APTN in a statement that this is a tragic situation and that the Medical Examiner's Office and the university are both investigating as well. Shauna Gordon wants justice if wrongdoing is found.
So this is the second death in our family of Aboriginal people in 1 year. My brother passed away last year, June 1st, going to the hospital, dealing with mental health. He reached out for help and he died at the hospital. Now this is the second death where another brother went to the hospital for help and he died at the hospital.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
The federal government says they've earmarked $195 million to boost employment initiatives for Indigenous people. Employment Minister Randy Boissonneau was in Vancouver recently to make the announcement. APTN's Tina House was there.
Through the Indigenous Fashion Week, they're going to give them the practicums and those opportunities throughout the year.
It's a busy day here at the Aboriginal Community Career Employment Services Society, also known as Access. Access has been providing employment and skill development programs for thousands of Indigenous people throughout the Lower Mainland since 1999. Today, Federal Workforce Development Minister Randy Boissonneau is here for an announcement.
On behalf of the Government of Canada, I'm happy to announce and celebrate that Access is receiving over $21 million for their Indigenous Training and Apprenticeship Program. And this funding, under the Skills and Partnership Fund, is going to help Indigenous people in Greater Vancouver to get the skills they need to complete technical training in a skilled trade and eventually achieve Red Seal Journey Person status.
Sid Stevens is one of those tradesmen. He went through an Access program and is now a carpenter working on major construction projects. He says he owes it all to Access.
So I started with their program called the Blade Runners, which was an introductory into construction and gaining me a bit of certifications through that. Upon completion of that, I was so career driven on becoming a full carpenter. And I didn't know where I was gonna go to for help in that scenario. And then 2 men by the name of Rob Egan, and he's not here today, but Gary Jobin. Without those 2 men, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today.
Lynn White is the CEO of Access. She says the $21 million will go a long way to expand their programs and services.
The funding that Access is receiving is and will continue to make a big impact on our urban Indigenous community. We are training hundreds of people, and they will fill much needed positions in the trades.
According to Minister Boissonnault, in the next 5 years, 700,000 skilled tradespeople are going to retire in Canada, which opens the doors for more newly trained tradespeople to fill those vacancies.
Our Indigenous people have been excluded from economic prosperity for too long, and we're working to come up into a life with meaningful employment and opportunity so that our young people will know that there is a path already cut out for them to follow.
Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
First Nations University of Canada has announced the first Indigenous journalism and communication degree in North America. The new program comes in the wake of layoffs in the journalism sector, but those involved in the program say journalism is very much alive. Our reporter Rachel May has more.
We started working about 2 years ago on a new program, an expanded program, did tons of research with alum, media professionals, Indigenous media at the community level to find out what they were needing. And based on all that research, we created this new program.
Shannon Avison has been with First Nations University since 1989 and is now an associate professor with the Indigenous Communications Arts Program, otherwise known as INCA. In the fall of 2023, the University of Regina stopped taking new journalism students. U of R journalism no longer exists, but students can still major in the subject. That opened the door for the First Nations University to move in. FNU has been running INCA since the 1980s. It's been upgraded to a full 4-year degree program. Avison says that despite layoffs in the broadcasting field, the industry is very much alive and ready for fresh faces.
You know, the time is now. This is a great time for communications and journalism, even though it's changing. And we sort of wonder where it's all going to end. It's not going to end. It's going to keep on growing and expanding.
Jamin Mike is an INCA grad. He's worked with Mississippi Radio, the Canadian Press, Globe and Mail, and the Toronto Star. He now works in communications for Treaty and Aboriginal Land Stewards Association of Alberta.
I would say don't be discouraged by the amount of people who will say that journalism is dead and there's no purpose or point in the industry, because we're always going to need human beings telling real human stories.
Avison says students can start taking courses towards the new degree beginning this September. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
An institution that has been advocating for Indigenous storytellers telling Indigenous stories on screen received significant news on Thursday. In recent years, the Indigenous Screen Office has supported projects like Bones of Crows, Little Bird, Night Raiders, and Slashback. While the ISO has been pushing for narrative sovereignty on the screen, its funding in the coming years was up in the air. Yesterday, the Minister of Canadian Heritage announced $65 million over the next 5 years for the ISO and committed to permanent funding of $13 million annually.
It is making a huge contribution by enabling Indigenous peoples to share their authentic stories at home and abroad, to see themselves reflected on screen, to show off all the amazing talent of Indigenous peoples. With its unparalleled expertise, the ISO supports Indigenous creators based on their actual needs. It provided funding for the building of a film and production studio in Iqaluit, an infrastructure that will have wide-reaching benefits for the local and the creative communities in Nunavut.
A Migma community in New Brunswick is revitalizing their language. We'll tell you more about that after the break. Welcome back to APTN National News Weekend. A Migma community in New Brunswick is revitalizing their language, not through formal instruction in classes, but as Angel Moore reports, by sitting down and listening to elders.
This is not a typical Migma language class. There is no assigned instructor. Here, everyone learns from each other and has a couple of laughs, including Vince Barlow of the Elsipogtog First Nation.
Yeah, it brightens up your day, really, you know what I mean? And Mi'kmaq language is a joyous language.
Elders and new speakers meet every Thursday in the band office at the Elnui Miniguk Migma Nation to speak Migma in a casual setting. Coordinated by Ashley Sunnypass, it's called Language Socials.
When you come, you have the opportunity to not only learn the language, but you're learning stories, you're learning about different medicines, you're learning about your ancestors. There's so much that's tied into it that people get to hear about.
Harrison Millier travels from the Elsipogtog First Nation to attend the socials. He says speaking Mi'kmaq is connecting with ancestors.
A lot of times we forgot our ancestors, and when we talk over here and when we bring them back, it brings back that feelings of and they're still around. Yeah.
Barlow is a fluent speaker, but he says the gathering helps him just as much as the people he teaches.
And you remember words that you haven't used for about 50 years, you know what I mean? They come up and it's, oh yeah, okay, and the simplest of words you forget because you're not using them.
The weekly gathering includes new learners, such as Katrina Sauk of the Elnu Miniguk Mi'kmaq Nation.
Learning Mi'kmaq makes me proud to be an Indigenous woman, a Mi'kmaq woman, and just being able to teach my children as well, because I didn't learn a lot of Mi'kmaq from my mother.
So far, Sauk is teaching her children words such as,
this is kind of like a lot of command words like "unka me," like "look at me," "nestuin," "did you hear me?" My favorite at bedtime is "gezalo," is "I love you." "Namotes," "I'll see you again," and "ajimpa," go to bed.
Sunnypass began the program 3 years ago so the elders could hear their language and teach others about the Mi'kmaq culture. Sunnypass hopes to expand the program.
Maybe one day we can have a Migma Language festival of our own here in our community where we would be able to do these type of things and share our Migma language with so many different people. So I sort of have that under my hat of something that I would like to see.
Angel Moore, APTN National News, Elnui Miniguk Mi'kmaq Nation.
Now to North Vancouver, British Columbia, where a schoolhouse from the early 1900s has been transformed into a place for the Squamish Nation to teach the younger generation their language and culture. APTN's Tina House has this story.
This area here, we do a lot of imaginary play, a lot of hands-on play with toys, which is why we refer it to the Squishetso Taiken, as you can see on the wall here. It's a lot of one-on-one interaction immersed. So we speak little to zero English. This is our immersion home for our people.
Originally built in 1912, this building, formerly known as the Little Yellow Schoolhouse at the Henry Hudson School in Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood, was set for demolition after a new school was built. But in 2023, the Squamish Nation bought it for $1 with the intention of creating a language nest for their nation. So, after being loaded onto a special semi-truck and then sent across the ocean by barge to North Vancouver, it finally arrived at its permanent home on the Capilano Reservation. After renovations and decoration, it officially opens today. For Squamish Nation Councillor Ann Wannock, it's a proud day for the entire Squamish Nation.
And we raise our hands to each and every one of you. We want to also say, Chek Quinman Tomia, to all those who made this building possible to be moved over here for our Munmun, our children, and Equato, all of our families.
Squamish Nation members and their families, including babies and toddlers, are welcomed into the nest to learn the language and immerse themselves into their culture.
Coming.
Kaya Williams is one of the teachers. She says it's an amazing feeling to see the younger generation speak their language.
It makes me feel really proud because mostly I always think of our ancestors who weren't given that chance. Mainly I always think of my late father who attended Indian day school, and he was always so proud to speak everything that he learned and would come home and teach to me. So to be able to do that full circle.
All of this is part of the Canadian government working with churches for the assimilation process and being able to remove the language and culture, and our old people held on to it and went underground and kept our language and culture so that now we're flourishing as a nation.
In 2010, the Squamish Nation only had 10 fluent speakers at that time. Now, thanks to various initiatives from the nation, they have saved their language from extinction. Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
One man's lofty dream is now creating opportunities for other Indigenous people to become pilots. We'll tell you how after this one final break. Welcome back. One man's dream to fly high in the sky is now creating opportunities for other Indigenous people to become pilots. Sav Jonza has more.
Atik Mason feels right at home amongst the airplanes at the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada in Winnipeg. It's no surprise, he is a pilot after all, but the road to his dream career was not always clear.
When I was a kid, that's when aviation kind of really got the bug with me. And that was when I was flying to and from my reserve in northern Manitoba, in St. Teresa Point, Manitoba.
St. Teresa Point First Nation is a place only accessible by plane or winter ice roads in northern Manitoba. Mason says a trip to the cockpit during a flight as a child got him interested in aviation, but music and art soon took over. He became a Juno Award-winning musician with his band, Burt Project One. Despite his success, he says a rock star life wasn't healthy, especially as a child of a residential school survivor.
The music was great, we were having success and everything, but there came a point in my life where I really had to decide to do things better and to be more healthy. And that's when aviation started to come back into my life.
He started flight training in 2016 and received a $40,000 scholarship from Perimeter Aviation 2 years later. That airline services remote communities in northern Manitoba and Ontario.
It was the scholarship that finally kicked it forward for me, where I had the resources where I could really commit to training full-time, and that changed everything.
Mason soon became Perimeter's first Indigenous pilot from a First Nation they serve. His story gave their parent company, Exchange Income Corporation, an idea: the Atik Mason Indigenous Pilot Pathway Program.
The idea was to put this training together to knock down those walls so that somebody could succeed, do what I have done, or better than me, I hope, someday, and give back to the communities.
With support from Manitoba, Kiwetinawi, Okamakanok, the program offers fully funded flight training to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who dream of becoming professional pilots. The hope is to have more pilots from the northern communities they serve.
A lot of these people that are coming into this program are maybe potentially one or two of the only people from their community that's ever tried to do this in the history of their community.
Training for the program takes place in Thompson, Manitoba and Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, in an effort to keep students near their home communities. Housing and food are provided during the training period. Graduates from the Atik Mason Indigenous Pilot Pathway Program are guaranteed job offers at the end of their training.
But in the type of flying that you do at Perimeter or any of these northern airlines, it's like freaking the maverick of flying, man. You're dealing with bad weather, small airports, not the greatest conditions. The weather's different every day. Every situation you do, every approach is going to be different. So, there's no mundaneness. You're not sitting in a cubicle staring at a screen all day.
Mason is a mentor and instructor for the program and says flying will always be part of the North. Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The 19th annual GEMS Film Festival kicked off this week in Vancouver as women filmmakers from across Canada are featured in a 6-day event. APTN's Tina House has this story.
It's the opening night of the 19th annual GEMS Film Festival, formerly known as Women in Film and Television, and it's a full house as they celebrate women filmmakers. Debbie Kershane is the Indigenous programmer of the GEMS Festival, which stands for Gender Equity Media Society, and says this year's lineup is exciting.
It's about 6 days, and there's about 36 films, 28 shorts and 8 features. We have a great lineup of Indigenous filmmakers, 3 shorts and 1 Inuit feature film happening on Friday.
And one of those filmmakers is Kaya George from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in North Vancouver. Stardom runs in her bloodline, as she is the great-granddaughter of the late actor Chief Dan George, the first Indigenous person ever to be nominated for an Oscar award. Her film, Our Grandmother the Inlet, is screening at this year's festival, and for George, who also grew up as an environmental activist, this film means a lot to her. She grew up along the Burrard Inlet, and it's now surrounded by industry.
We didn't see this place the way the world does now. The water wasn't a commodity. It was what sustained us. It fed us and cared for us. It was who we are.
It weaves in poetry I've written to the inlet and about the inlet, and it weaves it in with interviews of my father and my grandmother, and it shows the connection that I grew up with and that my people grew up with around the water and around the Burrard Inlet, and touches on our creation story, the Tsleil-Waututh people. As the story goes, we came from the water and we belong to the water, and we see it as our oldest grandmother.
It is our grandmother, the inlet.
Alexa Blind is featured in the short film Nisi Kasan Lex, directed by Kayla Wischel. The film centers around Alexa's creation of an online digital platform of her and her friends, and some of the issues they face growing up in a small town in Saskatchewan.
You don't realize how special and rare a connection like me and my friends, like a group like that, how rare that is to find in a community like this, because it's so hard to build and maintain. I have some friends, and they're some of the most amazing people.
Alexa started the online platform at 18 and has built a following through social media platforms.
I was a young person just taking care of my little brother.
I was diagnosed with several mental illnesses at a very young age.
It kind of began out of a place where I just wanted to give opportunity to my friends and other people to kind of share their raw story, what they've been through, what they kind of have struggles talking about.
Just a place where you can be real and raw with your story, and you have no fear of what people are going to say, what people are going to think.
Those videos that she made for her series Digital Voices were so beautiful and so true and so honest, and when I watched them I felt like only Lex could interview those people. They're just so amazing.
Kaya George has some advice for some upcoming filmmakers.
Don't let your youth, don't let your inexperience deter you from making something beautiful. I think the most powerful and the strongest works of art are just come from the core of who you are.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
That's all the time we have for your weekend news. For news anytime, visit our website at aptnnews.ca. You can also catch the Arctic Winter Games closing ceremony streaming live on our website, YouTube, and TikTok tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm Savannah Kelly. Marcy Miigwech, thank you for joining us. Have a great night.